Instead of using many appliances over the years, just use one to consume less and save more. Miele products are designed to last for 20 years. That's quality ahead of its time. Miele, immer besser.
Thank you. I'm presenting our design studio, Smart Design Studio, which is located in Sydney, which is a place that's cool in winter and very hot and humid in summer. It's halfway between the airport and the city and is a recently listed industrial area containing brick and steel buildings that look like this. Directly opposite us is a typical building of this area, brick offices at the front, horizontal windows, and a steel corrugated shed at the back. And our building is a new version of an industrial building. It's functional and durable. It's made from robust materials like brick and galvanized steel. And like industrial buildings, it's inventive in its use of structure and material. We're able to retain about 80% of the existing footprint, which was our first move in sustainability. But the front 7 meters needed to be demolished because it was made of asbestos, as was the roof to the building. At the front, we erected a lightweight concrete structure on steel columns and then put 4 catenary vaults over that space. We then integrated that into a brick facade and then infilled that with multi-pane steel windows like in the area. It's added a highly insulated plywood and steel roof that sits underneath 260 solar panels. So it's a very sustainable project, united by those principles of an industrial building. The building's architecture is designed from the inside out, so the windows are positioned to frame views to the skies, to the landscape, or to the street, the trees. And in the studio space, which is 20 by 20, is framed by 4 large walls that frame off the reception, materials library, canteen, and workshop spaces. We also have a mezzanine with meeting rooms and a boardroom. And at the top of the space, a crossover area that's a quiet workspace, a caretaker's residence, and an area for client and staff lunches. Our reception area has tiles on the floors and a sisal inlay and precast concrete beams, which have half the concrete of a normal building. It's a reception area, but also a gallery area where we can exhibit our work. You step up 3 steps into our studio space through here. It's 400 square meters and it's a top-lit warehouse space with a beautiful quality of light, and it's very quiet. It balances calmness with chaos and has a great sense of energy. It's also very sustainable, with no air conditioning in the studio space, being reliant on underfloor heating and cooling, natural ventilation, and natural light coming into the space with blinds to control that. We also have rainwater collection and use the photovoltaic panels. They generate about 3 times the energy that we use. We have 13 new trees and 2,000 drought-tolerant plants. The studio is designed for who we are and how we work. There's pin-up space and areas for models. There's tiled floors extend right through the studio space, and all the joinery is customized, designed to last for 100 years. This means that we use thick steel that's screwed together instead of glued aluminium. And all of the detailing and design supports that connection to its industrial past and also our commitment to durability. Even the model making workshop has solid surfacing and steel tiles on the kickboards in the materials library. The tiles that are laid on the floor have no grout in the joints. They're hard up against each other, and they're designed for commercial kitchens. So we're able to use the coved and bullnose tiles to wrap up into the workstation and then extend up into the kickboards behind these stairs. The cables used here are another example of how we use an everyday industrial material in a new way, and that forms the fall restraint from the void and from the stair with 53 cables that loop up and down and lace into each other. And this is almost impossible to photograph. I've not been able to do it, but it has a very strong form and delicate quality at the same time. As I mentioned earlier, the windows are framed to look up to the tree canopy and down to the ground instead of at the industrial car park opposite. The bathrooms have terrazzo walls, partitions and floors, and have meticulous attention to detail, including custom basins, handles, and hinges. We also custom designed the tables for the canteen breakout area that looks out onto the rear lane. And this is where you see the ends of one of those walls that echoes the form of the outside of the building. Through here, we have a counterweight window and a bar space that opens onto the rear lane, and that looks like this. So that's the original facade that's been restored with our new windows. It has a great connection back to the rear lane. At the top of the building, we have 3 banks like this of solar panels. We have the clerestory windows and also the 4 vaults, and they can be accessed by a curved steel and glass door here. The handles were made from scraps of marble that we found, and at the center of that space is a steel folded staircase that blends seamlessly out of a central column. The bricks are curved through the space, and the stairs held off the wall to allow light to bleed up from above or down from below. And we have pink granite on the floor. All of the bricks are dry pressed local bricks that are curved, and they're glued together, so we have no mortar joints. That takes you into a 33-metre long space with 4 catenary vaults, 2 large and 2 small, and it's all open plan. There's no doors in any of these spaces. As I mentioned, the bricks are glued together, so there are no mortar joints, and in between each vault is very large panels of glass, allowing the light to bleed in from the north and south directions into that space. The brick vaults are catenary shaped and they're structural, so there's no steel or concrete holding up these vaulted spaces. And light enters that space in beautiful ways, a space which contains many custom designed joinery pieces, such as this coffee table, which contains a TV, speakers and trays. It's also a space where I live and work. So I have meetings, lunches, and work up here on my own occasionally. To give you a sense of scale, the small vault is 2.7 high and the tall one is 4.2, and the large piece of glass above the sliding doors there is about 6.3 metres long. It comes to a complete point like this, which was a real challenge to purchase, make and install, but it's very beautiful in the space. The kitchen's consolidated into a 5-metre long island, and it sits under one of the small vaults here with a galvanised roof. You look back into that space from the outside like this through the doors and the large panels of glass, and you can see on the edge how the makeup of the brick and the galvanised roof and the insulation all stands. We made all these parts for the project, like the wheels in the space, or like the tables and the 5-metre long external sofa, which is made from rope through here. We also made chairs and stools for the space, and in the space you see acute attention to detail everywhere, including the ends of the joinery cabinets, which also houses the speakers. Our favourite artworks were built into the cupboards through here, and these spaces are non-delineated. So I mentioned before, there's no doors, and spaces blend from kitchen to living room to bedroom to dressing area to bathroom and so forth. We had the opportunity to make lots of little components like the soap dispensers here, or the flush buttons, or the PowerPoints, or mirrors, and towel rails and pivots to the doors. Many were custom made, which I really loved doing. And about 20 of these were made in total, and about half of those are possibly going into production. Such as these tables, which are made from steel with furniture linoleum laid over them, that fit kind of beautifully into these spaces. The last space I'll just show you is a crossover space. So it's got a daybed and a library space through here as well. The project really embraces my personal philosophy, which is about architecture from the inside out. What I'm aiming to do is to yield really extraordinary internal spaces that are developed not just for how they look and their spatial quality, but also for how they work and the integrity behind them, like the functionality, the sustainability, or the structural integrity in this case. I've gone a little bit fast, so I'm finished now.
Manuel, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you very much, because it was very beautiful. I have a question regarding the acoustic, because the space is wonderful due to the minimalism. And I would like to know if you have specific elements who helps the space to be more absorbent and yes, to treat the question of the comfort, the acoustic comfort.
Yeah, that's a good question. So just the main area we focused on was the studio space for acoustics, and in the private space above, we don't have any absorbative material apart from the furniture. But through here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but these are big pin boards where we put our documentation and our work in progress. And these elements through here are very high performance acoustic material made by a company called Ortex. So they directly point down into the studio, and on top of the cupboards, we also have absorbative material. So it really deadens the sound. There's no echo in the space. The thing you notice about it is you can hear people talking, but you can't really hear what they're saying. So it kind of works very well for that. There's also a painted plywood ceiling, so you can't see it, but it's rough sawn plywood, so it's got a beautiful texture and slightly breaks up the sound.
So that works. Acoustics works.
Yeah,
I think we need to move on to the next person because we're pressed for time, Manuel. Yale, what do you have?
I just want to say I'm really impressed by the building, by the interior, by the details. It's you mentioned that the building you wish to that the building will embody the core principle, and I think it really comes across. I have a little question about the circulation. We saw the very beautiful spiral stairs going up, beautifully designed. I was not sure, is this for everybody who works in the studio to get to the big vaults? I was not sure if there's
whether it's private.
Yeah. So it's a privately controlled space because I live up through there, but there's a door here into the studio so people can come up inside. And then, so this is all available to everybody every day. And the other space is really by invitation. But there's, to be honest, there's someone up here every day from the studio. The people know me quite well and they're coming and going. So that kind of takes you up the staircase into this open plan area.
I just wanted to make sure that the big vault it's your private space.
Yeah.
Connected well
that's
to the office. Yes. Okay. I was not sure about that. Beautifully,
Johnny.
beautifully divided.
Thank you.
Johnny.
Thank you, William. Beautifully presented with the diagrams, with sustainability. I have two questions I'd like to ask you. First is, what is the number one thing you love to work about, like these restored warehouse buildings? And how do you think you implemented the idea very well into your office? So the office idea and the warehouse. My second question is, for office design these days, there's a very big talk about biophilia. And although working with a warehouse doesn't seem to allow you to penetrate that green forestry to come in, how have you compensated this with the current trend of biophilia? Thank you.
Look, firstly, I just sort of talk about a bit about the detail and philosophy. What's kind of remarkable about the space through here is all of these steel trusses are made by 3 millimeter deep sections. And if you look in detail, you can see they're all screwed together in rows of 3 bolts. What I realized when I looked at the project closely is that it was built at a time when labor was inexpensive and materials were expensive. So we kind of adopted that philosophy throughout. All of the elements that we introduced were able to be dismantled and screwed together. And we put our time not into expensive materials, but really into kind of beautiful detailing and how that all fits together. I don't know if that really answers your question, but we're very inspired by that. One of the hardest things to work on the project was how to do a studio without air conditioning in our climate. It took a lot of work to do that because we have high humidity, so condensation forms very easily. In that vein, there's one of the biggest contributors to problems is moisture in the air. So people breathing contribute moisture, plants contribute moisture, and it sort of fights our endeavor to not have any sustainability or to have this space without air conditioning. To compensate for that, we planted over 2,000 plants in the street. We put in 13 new trees. We're lobbying the council to get more trees in the area. And since doing that, we've noticed a return to birds and bees and worms and all sorts of stuff in the area. And it's kind of passion of mine is to to look after the road reserves across the road, down the road, in front of
So
us.
it's kind of
try and compensate.
offsetting what you haven't managed within the frame of the building.
That's right. That's right. And we did also research how much carbon our trees would consume. Indoor plants do very little in that regard unless they flourish.
Sorry, William. I just want to hear from Oliver.
Sure, I can be quick. I mean, I had two observations. One was the lack of indoor plants, but I think you've just talked about the fact that that's to try and moderate the air quality. I'm surprised because I thought indoor plants were good for air quality, but apparently not. The other one was, I'm just curious about your humidity, right? I was just curious about your attitude to colour, because we saw the red tiles in the lobby area, but otherwise the staff are dressed in black and white, the artwork's black and white. There is that, and just in terms of mental health and the human condition, what your attitude to palette is in that sense.
Yeah. So photo shoot day, we dressed in black and white and all worked together
Right.
for the day and had the photographer hang out with us. What we do have, and this is sort of cleanup day, is we have a lot of materials in the studio. So there's always samples of stone or timber or other materials lying around, and all of our work is pinned up in the space. So on the pin-up boards, you would see work in progress and pinned up through the space. So for us, having a neutral palette was quite important. We wanted to also use a kind of warm, inexpensive tile on the floor that kind of brought a sense of warmth to the space. In our apartment space, there's kind of beautiful but quite subtle colours. I think these are probably as much aligned to the work that we do as a studio as what we wanted to create.
I'm going to have to.
Okay, thank you, William.
I'm just going to make one quick comment that I can't resist. You started off by explaining the sort of the continuity of the industrial origins of the building. And I can see that you're speaking from your apartment upstairs. I can see the vault behind your head. And in some curious way, you have reproduced the old, the Victorian system of the boss living upstairs in the palatial apartment while all the proles are downstairs in lines. Which I'm not sure how you feel about that, or with Yale's question was very pertinent because dare they venture upstairs and catch you in your pajamas? Anyway, on that thought, thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.